Because of what you're about to hear, the whole sister-wife story is about to have its entire narrative rewritten. It's a truth that for years, fans have thought they'd already lived through, the most dramatic parts of the Brown family's tale, where the ideals of plural marriage have fallen apart, where favoritism in a relationship has been brought into sharp relief, where women have decided to stand up instead of being silenced in a plural family. However, none of them expected this shocking turn of events. Janelle Brown, the wife who'd been the voice of reason in her family for so long, has actually entered a brand new chapter of her life, which has been officially confirmed. This is not just a rumor being circulated through cyberspace. Additionally, it is reported, this is not a misleading headline. This is real. This is personal. And this changes everything. For more than a decade, the characters observed Janelle living in a complex marriage system that frequently called for sacrifice without necessarily having any promises to keep. It was Janelle who chose to work hard, who chose to balance logic and loyalty in her world. It was Janelle who chose to keep her feelings in check as the world around her came crashing down. During the instances when the pressures came to a head, during the arguments and the tears and the ultimatums, it was Janelle who chose to keep her cool. This made her earn the respect of her viewers in many ways. It also made her hide the truth that she was slowly but surely fading away in an environment that no longer needed her. So when the message, "It's official, Janelle Brown wedding," appeared on social networks, it was not just surprising, but astonishing in the sense that, for many people, Janelle was a symbol of strength, not love, complacency, not happiness. And then, of course, there was her bombshell. What makes this revelation even more explosive is the manner in which it came out. Not with a TLC tease, not with a carefully choreographed announcement, but through whispers, snippets, and finally, inflammatory video that may never have been intended for public consumption. In a matter of hours, Janelle's private milestone found itself a contentious flashpoint for opinions, speculations, and indignations. But before we walk into this controversy, we need to understand why this image is so meaningful. Janelle Brown's story has always been one that differs from the rest of the wives. Right from the start, her goals did not involve seeking the limelight or trying to get the upper hand emotionally. It involved independence, logic, and a relationship. However, the more the family dynamics shifted towards a family unit that depended on one relationship above all else, the more Janelle found herself on the fringes, not as the vocal outcast, but rather as the neglected one. The pain wasn't dramatic. It was slow. It was isolating. And it was real. Their fans noticed the change well before any sort of official split was made public. Janelle's body language has changed. She has a harder edge to her voice. She has less patience in her smile. She talks openly and honestly about feeling like she's not being supported or heard, and like she's financially vulnerable. The cracks are there. They just can't be denied anymore. When Janelle made her exit from the marriage, it wasn't with fireworks, nor did it come with the added benefit of an explosive relationship-detonating breakup, complete with dramatic shouting in order to gain ratings. No, instead, it came with something much stronger than all of that. Honest clarity. Janelle put herself first. And with that, she effectively dismantled one of the most potent emotional bonds that exist within the world of sister wives. It could very well be argued that Janelle, it's why this wedding, this confirmation, is so painful, because it's not just about love. It has everything to do with. For years, Janelle has been in a system in which her needs were secondary, her voice tempered in an attempt at a peaceful cohabitation. She has been in a relationship in which she has had to operate in the darkness of polygamy, in a media spotlight, and in a comparison that has defined her. Yet now, seemingly out of nowhere, she has discovered something quite different. One feels the fervor of fans mixed with something else, a sense of protectiveness. Because this happiness is fragile, it is sacred. And with news of stolen video of their weddings hitting the airwaves, many believed Janelle's privacy was breached all over again. Consider that for a minute. A woman who has devoted decades of her life to public attention, who let cameras in on her marriage, her disputes, her heartbreak, who remained calm while her whole world disintegrated around her on national television. Then, just as she has made the decision for herself, she does it quietly, in secret. That decision is somehow. That's why this first session of the story isn't concerned with either the specifics of the wedding plans or the mystery footage. It has to do with the emotional significance of this particular moment. Janelle Brown marrying. This isn't a twist, it's a statement. She is no longer waiting, it states, for the call that will choose her place. Once more, no longer negotiating for respect, not holding space for a life that doesn't hold her back. Perhaps it's because all of these factors combined that it feels so awkward for some people and so motivational for others at this particular moment. Child protection. Fans are going back at episodes from a different perspective altogether, analyzing situations when a Janelle was blowing off snubs, times when her loyalty was questioned, and not once was her service factored into that thinking. Scenes when she was defending a family she no longer had either. Everything seems like a precursor to what we know today. Because this wedding does not erase her past, it reframes it. Nevertheless, just strength does not always mean making noise. Strength can mean endurance. Strength can mean silence. Strength can mean standing back without needing an applause. And so, as this new tale is about to be told, it is essential that you understand one thing. This is not simply another Sister Wives update. This marks the start of an entirely different story, one in which Janelle Brown does not revolve around her current family structure, emotional disequilibrium, or survival skills. She is a woman of choice, and this choice, made in the most unexpected of ways, has laid the groundwork for one of the most anticipated events in Sister Wives annals. Before there was any word of a wedding, before rumors of secret weddings or leaked videos, something more significant was quietly taking its course. The way Janelle Brown was slowly disengaging from a life that no longer loved her back. Unlike the dramatic exits viewers had seen before, Janelle's separation from Kody Brown didn't arrive with slammed doors or explosive accusations. It came quietly, almost invisibly, the way emotional exhaustion often does. And that quietness was exactly why so many people underestimated just how broken things truly were. For years, Janelle played a role that few fully appreciated. She was the practical one, the provider, the peacemaker. As emotions ran hot and conflicts dominated the family narrative, Janelle often tempered the household with clear-headedness and calm. She worked, she planned, she sacrificed, and rarely complained. But that strength came at a price. As the family dynamic started to shift, it painfully became obvious that Kody's emotional investment had become smaller. His focus turned increasingly to Robin, leaving the other marriages strained and neglected. While Christine reached her breaking point publicly, Janelle endured in private. She rationalized. She waited. She hoped. Yet hope can only survive so long without nourishment. Viewers started to notice subtle yet powerful changes. Janelle stopped excusing behavior that once would have been brushed off. She questioned decisions more openly. She pushed back, but not aggressively, rather firmly. And when Kody demanded loyalty without offering emotional security, something inside Janelle finally shifted. This was not rebellion. This was realization. Perhaps the most telling moments came when Janelle readily admitted that her marriage to Kody had stopped feeling at all like a marriage. The emotional connection was tenuous, the respect inconsistent, and the partnership, once built upon a foundation of shared goals, had eroded to great distance and frustration. The most painful part, probably, wasn't the absence of romance. It was the lack of consideration that bothered me. Janelle had spent years deferring to the family's needs ahead of her own. She supported moves she didn't wholly believe in. She adjusted her expectations. She was flexible, while the rules around her were always in flux. Yet here she was, still made to feel like her loyalty was never enough. That kind of emotional imbalance doesn't shatter a person all at once. It wears them out gradually. Therefore, when finally Janelle did step back from the marriage, it wasn't impulsive. It was inevitable. She didn't make an announcement with celebration. She didn't frame it as victory. She framed it as truth. A calm, steady truth that said, "This no longer works for me." And that was radical. Because in the world of sister wives, endurance had far too often been confused with love. Staying had been rewarded more richly than healing. And leaving, especially quietly, challenged everything this family once stood for. It wasn't just about Kody as far as Janelle's decision went. It was about identity. For the first time in decades, she began to live without filtering choices through a plural marriage structure. She took up her health, her independence, and her children. Fans noticed the change almost immediately. She looked lighter, more grounded, more confident, and most importantly, more private. That wasn't an accident. After years of letting cameras capture nearly every detail of her life, Janelle began setting some firm boundaries. She started holding back. She closed off her personal life. And when people inquired about her future romantic life, she kept her responses intentionally ambiguous. This silence led to speculation, of course. Some believed she would remain single forever, content with independence alone, while others wished she may find love again, but doubted she'd ever risk vulnerability after everything she'd endured. What nobody expected was how quietly that next chapter would begin. Sources close to Janelle say her new relationship didn't grow from desperation or loneliness. It grew from a place of stability. There were no dramatic announcements, no public displays meant to incite a response. It wasn't about proving she had moved on. It was about living like she already had, and that difference matters. Because Janelle wasn't trying to get approval. She guarded peace. Not loud enough for critics who wanted some sort of spectacle from her divorce, but powerful enough to have quite literally redefined her whole future. She walked away without bitterness, without revenge, without needing to tear anyone else down in order to stand taller herself. And that restraint is precisely what makes fans respect her so much. Of course, in retrospect, the seeds for this wedding had been sown well before vows were spoken. They'd been sown in moments of self-respect, in boundaries drawn, in the courage to admit that love without reciprocity is not love at all. This session of Janelle's story isn't about romance, it's about release. Letting go of expectations, releasing guilt, releasing the need to equate endurance with worth. By the time wedding rumors surfaced, Janelle did the most challenging thing. She let go emotionally. The ceremony was just the final symbol of a transformation. that had been unfolding for years, however private or whatever controversies surrounded it. That's why this chapter feels so meaningful. Because Janelle didn't leave her marriage to run towards something else. She ran away to get herself back. Whatever next came, love, partnership, commitment came out of a space of choice, not out of obligation, out of strength, not out of survival. So when fans now hear the words Janelle Brown wedding, they aren't just reacting to a headline. They're witnessing the result of a long, quiet journey, one that began the moment Janelle realized she deserved more than a life built on compromise. For Janelle Brown, the wedding was never meant to headline. It wasn't designed for cameras, confessionals, or cliffhangers. Rather, everything about this moment suggests it was meant to be the exact opposite of what her life had been for years. Quiet, intentional, and deeply protected. After having walked away from a marriage that had lived under the weight of constant public scrutiny, the powerful lesson Janelle had learned was that not everything meaningful required an audience. And so when she decided to remarry, she did so on her own terms. No TLC contracts, no sister wives branding, no dramatic build-ups meant to drive the ratings. It was just about a woman choosing to love without noise. Sources close to the situation described the ceremony as simple, yet emotionally rich. Nothing extravagant. No lavish stage. No attempt to impress strangers. It wasn't about spectacle. It was about connection. Every detail, from the location to the guest list, reflected one clear intention: privacy. This was not the Janelle that viewers had known on television. This was Janelle healed. People who had made good on their status, not due to some sense of celebrity, but loyalty to her well-being. Friends who'd stood by her through the painful transitions. Family members who respected boundaries. People who knew this wasn't about her past, but about her future. Perhaps that is what made the ritual so powerful. For years, Janelle had shared space with multiple relationships, schedules, and emotional hierarchies. This wedding was something very different. Exclusivity, clarity, choice, no competition, no comparison. Just two people standing together, free from the expectations that once defined her life. But then comes the kicker. Whispers started online not long after the ceremony. A short clip. An indistinct picture. A snippet of video that felt invasive. Fans noticed it almost immediately. The footage felt wrong, somehow. Not celebratory, not official. It didn't feel like a planned release. Then the rumor mill got working. Stolen. The act of footage from Janelle's private wedding ever being taken and shared without her consent simply raised a dark spot in fans' minds. Because after all she had been through, the thought of yet another boundary crossing felt deeply unfair. This wasn't some kind of red carpet event. This wasn't a televised special. This had been her life. As speculation mounted, so did outrage. Many fans wondered how such footage could have existed in the first place. Had someone been surreptitiously filming? Had a guest betrayed confidence? Or had this footage been leaked by someone who felt entitled to it because Janelle once had lived her life on reality television? That question, who owns someone's story, became central to the controversy. For over a decade, she'd let them into her marriage, her struggles, and her vulnerabilities. But that access was given in specific circumstances, within a specific context. And this wedding existed outside of all that. It wasn't content. It wasn't a storyline. And yet, here it was, circulating, dissected, debated. But there was something else that echoed loud to fans. Janelle herself said nothing. No statement. No explanation. No public reaction. And that silence spoke more volumes. Because instead of racing to control the narrative, it seemed Janelle did what she has learned to do best: protect her peace. Those closest to her suggest the leak is not anything she wanted or approved. In fact, many believe the absence of official footage confirms the ceremony was never intended for public consumption at all. This realization bears much emotional weight. Imagine working for years at trust, rebuilding what your boundaries are, and being selective about who you allow into some of the most intimate moments of your life, only to have that trust torn from your grasp. It's not about a video. It's about violation. The leaked footage didn't show much in terms of detail, but what it did reveal emotionally was far more consequential. Janelle seemed calm, happy, grounded, a version of herself that audiences hadn't glimpsed in years. And, ironically, that image only intensified the outrage, because this joy was true, and it was taken. As debates raged online, some argued that public figures should expect this kind of exposure. Others pushed back hard, insisting that consent matters, fame or not. In Janelle's case, the case felt clear. She had deliberately stepped away from the spotlight. This wedding was a personal milestone, not a performance. So why couldn't it be left alone? The explanation might lie in how hard some people are finding it to give up the old narrative. Janelle had spent years being framed as the logical wife, the supportive one, the steady presence behind the scenes. Her boisterous happiness upends that image. It challenges assumptions, and for some, it morphs into entitlement. But what that leak truly let loose wasn't the ceremony. It was the lingering struggle between public expectation and personal autonomy. Janelle's wedding acted as a line in the sand, separating the woman she was and the life she has built now. The emergence of unauthorized footage threatened to blur that line. But in a dramatic turn of events, it appears that the leak has done just the opposite. Far from eclipsing the moment, that video just served to illustrate how fervently fans will defend her. The backlash was not curiosity. It was concern. People didn't ask for more footage. They asked for respect. And that may be the most revealing result of all. Because while the wedding itself was meant to be private, the reaction it sparked revealed something deep. Janelle Brown is no longer seen as a character on a show. She is seen as a woman who has earned her right to peace. The whole session of this story is not going to be about what was filmed. It's about what shouldn't have been shared in the first place. And as furthered, there's but one truth that cannot be overlooked. This new life of Janelle's isn't begging for validation. It's begging for space. Whether that space will be respected is yet to be seen. One thing, though, is for sure. This wedding and the controversies surrounding it have permanently altered how people think about her journey. Something then occurred that not a single person could have predicted, but in hindsight, it said far more about the Sister Wives fan community than could possibly be discovered in an episode of the show. As soon as whispers of the sexually explicit video footage of their wedding emerged online, the internet exploded, not with happiness, not out of curiosity, but with rage, blinding, protective, passionate rage. And at the forefront of it all was one burning question being asked on social media sites. Why can't Janelle Brown have a single private moment? For years, viewers had witnessed Janelle give everything, the little time she had, her physical efforts, and emotional resilience, to a family structure that began falling apart in a manner that left her reeling. So when news of her private wedding footage being leaked broke, there was a sense of personal affront for viewers who had become emotionally invested in her story. This wasn't gossip. This wasn't entertainment. To many people, this was a violation. Twitter, YouTube comment sections, Reddit forums, and fan sites erupted overnight. Longtime supporters had not asked for more footage. They had not demanded more information. What they had demanded was answers. Fans had asked how the footage was recorded, who recorded it, and most importantly, why it was necessary for it to be shared when it was obviously intended to be private. And the tone was different this time. Back then, sister wives dramas usually divided the fan base. Sides were taken. Arguments were had. But not this time. The reaction here is overwhelmingly one of unity. Fans are rallying behind Janelle, in numbers never seen before. Comments flowed in. She gave us her pain for years. This was her joy. Leave it alone. This was not TLC's story to tell. Privacy isn't something you lose forever, just because you were on TV. Stolen footage, once a term, became so much more than that. It became a rallying cry. Some fans even speculated about a possible motive for leaking the footage. Was it taken secretly in a crowded house by a guest? Was it shared out of a sense of entitlement to a story about a reality TV star like Janelle? Was it shared thoughtlessly? Whatever their motivation, there was no doubt that trust had been violated. Add to that the emotional element created by Janelle's continued lack of speaking. She did not take to the internet to defend herself against the attack. There's been no statement from her. There was no threat of a lawsuit in public. She did something that angered her detractors but pleased her supporters. She remained silent. This silence, in turn, became a statement in itself. It was the first time that Janelle was not having to explain herself to anybody. She did not have to defend her decisions. She did not have to ease an awkward situation for the comfort of people around her. She was simply maintaining a boundary and leaving the rest of the world to respond accordingly. And it did so. The more this scandal escalated, the more there were people trying to downplay it, with claims that reality TV stars should not be surprised to find themselves in the public eye. This argument was quickly dispelled by fans who reminded everyone of an important fact. Consent isn't time-sensitive. Janelle did not owe the public her second chance at love. Janelle did not owe the public closure either. She didn't owe the public visuals or proof. This wedding wasn't part of a storyline. It was the end of something very personal. Serena Ben on Premiership Rugby. There was much fan anger, but then many fans saw something else among all the anger. This was more than a video. It was all about control. Janelle's life had been controlled by systems that restrict her autonomy. Not religious obligations, family dynamics, television contracts. And her decision to keep her marriage private was an assertion of independence. The AV scandal threatened that independence and reminded every woman with a public presence that it is never an easy matter for women to take back control of their world. A realization like this is a big shock. You could feel it in the comments, in the reaction videos, in the emotional responses from viewers who said they saw their own experiences reflected in Janelle's struggle to preserve something sacred. However, fans weren't just rallying around Janelle Brown. They were supporting the need for privacy within healing. Interestingly, the backlash even impacted the perception of the larger Sister Wives universe. People began questioning the role of TLC in the entire scenario, even when there was no evidence of their involvement. The mere fact that the communities are worried about the aspect of exploitation is enough to highlight the manner in which the show has changed the levels of expectation. But this time, the audience pushed back. They drew a line, and in doing so, they reshaped a conversation. Rather than saying, "Can we see more? Should we?" they asked. Instead of seeking answers, they demanded respect. And in what may well be the most ironic repercussion of all, this leaked video strove to, or unknowingly did not, steal Janelle's moment, but instead bolstered her support. The outrage escalated into unity. Speculation was transformed into protection. The controversy escalated to a mass refusal to accept her happiness as happiness. The fact that we are all biologically mortal means we can find meaning in other people, he wrote in 2010. In the fans were no longer viewing Janelle as the girl in the complex family saga. They were now looking at her as the woman who had suffered enough and needed peace. As the noise settled, one thing became clear. This wedding meant more than a celebration of a family member's joy. It became a symbol of what happens when a member of a system that profits from its silence decides that it will step into a place that demands that it be respected. Even as the origin of the footage in question is not certain, the message being conveyed by the audiences is clear. Janelle Brown's fate is no longer a given. When the noise ultimately dies down, when the rumors run their course and the leaked video stops being so potent, one thing is crystal clear. Janelle Brown has already won. Obviously, winning may be a relative term here. Not because she got married, not because she has moved on, but for the fact that she chose herself completely, totally, unapologetically. This wedding is not the culmination of Janelle's story. It is the soft introduction to something much deeper and more significant. Living a life of intention as opposed to one of survival. And that is a world of difference. Janelle had been living under an arrangement that required sacrifice as evidence of devotion. An arrangement which taught her, explicitly and implicitly, that to remain is an act of strength. Compromise is a virtue in its own right. And individual happiness is subordinated to the greater good. And she believed it. However, life is not the equivalent of mere survival. What makes this moment so poignant isn't the ceremony per se, it's the contrast. The contrast between the woman that the viewer met years ago and the woman that she has become today. In the past, Janelle always prioritized equality in her love. She accepted a lack of intimacy because it was normal. She ignored being neglected because she knew that a larger picture was at play. That image is now gone. In its stead is raised a woman who recognizes her value without needing to justify it. This is more than love. It is choice. Choice without force. Choice without fear. Choice without the constant negotiation that once characterized her life. There is no hierarchical dynamic at play here. No competition. No need to prove one's loyalty through enduring pain. Just clarity. It is just that clarity that makes this chapter seem so conclusive and so hopeful too. For fans, this moment offers reflection. By now, it should not be hard to remember Janelle being behind or struggling. Behind or struggling with what? Everything. Indeed, it does not require reflection or analysis from fans to remember Janelle being behind or struggling with something. This is, after all, what Janelle does. The erasure of Janelle Monáe is an A. Reward for her loyalty was usually more responsibility. Her reward for her patience was usually silence. Therefore, when Janelle decided to remarry away from the cameras of reality TV, it was not an issue of privacy, but self-respect. It marked the final chapter of reclaiming control of her story. She did not need any confirmation from the audience, the media, or even the family, whom she previously defined herself with. Perhaps that's what makes this wedding so disruptive to the traditional narrative. Because it proves a radical truth. You can leave without imploding. With these words, he reminded her that she didn't have to walk away in silence. You can heal without doing it in public. You can find love without advertising it. In a culture of oversharing, Janelle's decision to hold back is itself a form of expression. In a world where so many are motivated by a hunger to be seen and a need to be acknowledged for things they are, The controversy surrounding the leaking footage, paradoxically, only serves to emphasize this fact. If anything, it proves how much ground she has gained. The woman who was once required to justify herself no longer has anything to justify. Her silence is not avoidance, it's resolution. She doesn't have to deal with correcting any rumors about herself. There's nothing she needs to defend about her happiness. She doesn't have to invite any person into a space they didn't mean to enter. This line is the legacy. And looking ahead, it will prove even more important. Whatever the future holds for Janelle, it won't be built on the premise of plural marriage or television contracts. It will be built on the values she has chosen. Values like honesty, stability, mutual respect, and peace. Regardless of whether the viewing public sees her face again on television or not, her legacy is already established. She demonstrated the power of walking away from a system that does not serve you while maintaining your identity. She proved that independence does not mean isolation. Privacy is not the same as shame. This is because starting all over does not mean that one has, and most of all, she proved that happiness doesn't require an invite. Too Long picks up where Harden, its prequel episode, left off, with Janelle back with her father and her mother in a distant memory, but a constant presence in her psyche and her storylines. For most of Janelle's episodes, her mother is a constant source of comfort and understanding, and it is always a reminder that it is never too late to change. This is what makes this wedding significant beyond being a fan interest. It's no longer about sister wives. It's about women's empowerment. It's about creating their own definitions of what being successful means after walking out from what once was known and valued. Janelle doesn't sugarcoat how tough her path has been. Janelle doesn't appropriate history. She brings it with her, but she doesn't let history dictate her destiny, which may be the most powerful message of all. Thus, as this chapter ends, far from being asked whether Janelle Brown will speak out about the footage or if the truth will ever come out, one is left with these far more profound questions. Will we let her story unfold the way she chooses? Since not all endings happen with a climactic finish. Sometimes they happen softly, with a package of love, a wrapping of boundaries, a hiding away from view. This wedding isn't an escape. It's not revenge. It's not a statement for the public. It's a promise to herself. And after all she has been through, this promise is plenty. Janelle Brown didn't simply move on. She stepped forward. And for the first time in their relationship, the story belongs entirely to her.